We have a health nugget today, and I had the privilege of going last February to the GC offices in Maryland, and I got training in domestic violence and abuse when I was there. And so what I'm going to share with you this morning is a little bit of what I learned when I was there, going over some statistics, what abuse is, what it isn't, what we can do about it individually, and also as a church. And so I'm just going to share a video with you, a short snippet from the North American division.
Good research shows that one of the most common myths among Christian pastors is that abuse is not common in their congregations.
Growing up without a father figure in the home, but I always wanted to have a family where I had children and I had a husband and, we walked off into the sunset. Wasn't to be like that.
My first study in domestic violence in the Adventist church took place in the North Pacific Union. And we did a survey study of 49 churches, yielding 1,431 responses. And what we found is that about a third of the women and about a fifth of the men had experienced some type of physical abuse in a relationship with their partner. And at that time, that was about on par with the other national studies that were coming out.
It's hard to deny, though we can, but it's harder to deny that abuse happens in society. But there's this very common misconception that, it happens out there, not those liberals, they don't get it, they don't know Jesus, so it's common out there, but not here. Whatever our frame of reference, abuse happens out there, but it's in our family, it's not so common here. Research is quite clear that abuse rates are pretty similar within the church as without. They're a little bit lower, and thank the Lord for that, but they're pretty similar.
So we can see just from this short beginning of the documentary some of the statistics in the Adventist church. It said for 49 churches that they looked at, there was a third of the women and 1/5 of the men had experienced some type of abuse within their partner relationships. And we even saw that statistic at the end of, for that time period of the Afghan war, there was over twice the number of Americans killed, women killed due to partner violence. And so we can see that it is a concern in the church and the numbers are high. And I wanted to just look at what is abuse. An abusive relationship is one that is characterized by a pattern of harmful behavior intended to control the other person. And so it's really focusing on control. Types of abuse is emotional, physical, stalking. It can be spiritual as well. And there is a cycle of abuse, something that we can look at in the life to see if what this looks like. It usually starts when tensions are building. The abuser creates tension and the survivor's stress builds. This can be that walking on eggshells experience. And this will lead to an incident, some sort of abuse, either physical, verbal, psychological, in order for the abuser to dominate the survivor. But then there will be a period of reconciliation, where the abuser makes excuses or attempts to apologize for the incident. And for a period of time, there will be calm again in that relationship. things will seem peaceful, even better than before, but this doesn't last forever. As you can see, this is a cycle, and then it will come back to that walking on eggshells experience. And God has given us power of positive influence. You know, the Bible says we are to be the salt of the earth and the light of the world. But when that power is turned into control of others, that isn't of God. And these are listed some of the ways in which power is gotten or control is tried to got over someone else. For instance, using intimidation. These can be nonverbal threats. Using coercion and threats. This can be verbal. Also emotional abuse, isolation, minimizing, denying and blaming, using children, using privilege, also economic abuse. One that is not known about very well or understood is emotional abuse, and this can be putting someone down, making them feel bad about themselves, calling them names, making them think they're crazy, playing mind games, humiliating them, or making them feel guilty. So these are all forms of emotional abuse. Some of the myths around abuse and domestic violence that will change how we relate to others that are going through this and maybe prevent us from really sympathizing or helping them as we could are listed here. Abuse and violence do not happen in Christian homes, especially not in Adventist homes. Another myth, people who act abusively do so because they have mental illness. Most people who report abuse are not hurt that badly. They are seeking attention. Abuse happens exclusively in lower class homes. Abuse is done only by men, and the victim survivors are only women. Victim survivors of abuse usually provoke their partners, leading to arguments that get out of control. The person acting abusively probably does not express affection or love. And the final myth is, if the victim survivor does not like the way their partner is treating them, they can easily leave. So we actually see that this is not the case for any of these, but we're going to look into this last one because that's something that comes up a lot is, why don't the victim survivors just leave? If they're having a difficult time at home, can't they just get out of that situation? Statistics say that most victim survivors leave 6 to 8 times prior to leaving for good. So they try to leave. But some of the barriers to actually moving to safety and leaving could be custody of children or greater harm to themselves, children, family, or pets. And they talk about in the video later, they show that the greatest danger that a victim survivor is in is when they try to leave, because this can trigger things in the abuser, and things can come out like, if I can't have you, then no one can. And we know that's a very dangerous situation. Other barriers can be financially insecure, also limited or no job skills. These people can be without support. They can also be optimistic that the person acting abusively will be able to change. And so they're hoping, waiting. And then they have often a large fear of not being believed. So what can we do individually and as a church? What can we do? There is a prevention triangle, and at the bottom is the primary prevention. And this is targeted towards everyone in the church. They can partake of education. We can support having healthy relationships within the church. The secondary prevention would be targeted towards those that are actually facing the domestic abuse. So let's say they come to you, how could we be able to help them at that point? If another church member comes to you and says, I'm having this problem, or maybe you notice something. What can you do at that point? And we're going to talk about that in the next slide. But the tertiary prevention, the one at the top, that's where we have professional help, like counseling, that people can be able to go to in order for them to experience healing in their lives. So focusing back in on the secondary prevention, we can understand signs of abuse. Some of those are isolation from family, friends, and support systems. Also, if they're being closely accompanied by their partner at all times, if they have complaints of physical problems, if they have no access to or control of the family finances, if they have low self-esteem, if they have depression, anxiety, and PTSD, or also substance abuse. And so this isn't an exhaustive list, but there's some of the things that could potentially be signs of substance abuse. And of course, if someone has these, it doesn't necessarily mean they're being abused. Not every person with depression is someone that's being abused, but these are some things that we can look out for to kind of clue into those around us and what help they might be needing. Something else that we can do is to be ready to respond. And so they taught us this in the training. They taught us to believe, grieve, and relieve, and then do a safety check. So if someone comes to you, you say, I believe you. Because one of the biggest fears of a victim survivor is that no one's going to believe them. I'm stuck in this situation, and I have no way out, and I'm very afraid. And who can I talk to that would even believe I'm going through this? Because it's a very unbelievable situation. So when they come to you, you can say, I believe you. And then we grieve. We respond with empathy. I'm so sorry that you are going through this. And then we relieve the burden. Because oftentimes they're reflecting that this is my fault. I've done something to deserve this. But the abuse is not their fault. There's nothing that someone can do that would warrant them being abused in any way. So we just assure them of that. But then we do a safety check before they leave our presence. We always have to do a safety check. And we can ask them on a scale of 1 to 3, where 1 is feeling safe but cautious, and 3 is I feel afraid for my life, where would you place yourself when you go home? And so if they say number 1, we can offer them resources. And actually, they have asked us to create resources, and I'll have these in the back, but we have all the local domestic violence and abuse resources for the Santa Barbara community, and I'll have them in the foyer if you're interested in taking these. So we can refer them to counseling. We can refer them to safe shelters, both for children and for adults, to legal aid, other crisis centers that may be important to them, helplines. And so all of that information is here. We also have, from the North American Division, some other resources that we can give to them, or just for education of ourselves about what domestic violence and abuse is. So that's if they answer 1. If they answer 2 or 3 as to their safety, we really need to bring up an emergency shelter or law enforcement as well. If they are an adult, though, we cannot report for them. They have to be the ones that actually want to report. But if they are a child and you are a mandated reporter, like a teacher, a social worker, a nurse, a doctor, and pastor, then it's required that we report for children, for minors. And so those are some of the things that we can do as a church family to be able to help, to be educated, to support healthy relationships in our church, to understand the signs of abuse, and then also to be ready to respond and know how to help these people when they come to us. Thank you.